kitchen is on fire! Madam, no. We have to get out.
The evening sun painted the sky gold as music filled the air. Mrs. Belinda's restaurant, once silent and dark, now shone with bright lights and colorful balloons. People laughed, drums beat, and the smell of jollof rice and fried meat danced through the street. Children ran around happily. Women in flowing wrappers clapped to the rhythm of the drums. Everyone had come to celebrate. The proud restaurant was alive again. In the middle of it all, Mrs. Belinda stood tall in her shining dress. But this time, her face carried no pride, only humility. She lifted a microphone, her voice shaking. "My people," she began softly. "Once this place was filled with bitterness. I was blind, proud, and I treated those around me like nothing." Her eyes turned to Glory, who stood shyly at the corner, her old dress neat but simple. Tears filled Mrs. Belinda's eyes as she said, "But when my life was falling apart, when I lay on the hospital bed, it was this girl, this angel, who saved me." Gasps filled the crowd. Customers clapped their hands, some wiping their eyes. Mrs. Belinda stretched her hand toward Glory. "From today, Glory is not a maid. She is my daughter. She is my pride." The drums grew louder, cheers rose, and even Glory's poor mother wept as she watched her daughter honored. For the first time in her life, Glory felt truly seen. Her heart pounded as she bowed her head, whispering a small prayer of thanks. But in the corner of the room, where shadows hid faces, 3 men sat quietly. They did not clap, they did not smile. These were Mrs. Belinda's ex-workers, the ones she had fired and disgraced long ago. Their eyes were sharp, like hunters waiting in the dark. One leaned forward and whispered, "She thinks she has changed. She thinks life will forgive her." Another clenched his fist under the table. "We lost everything because of her. Our families scattered, children went hungry, and now she dances with joy." The third smirked coldly. "Let her enjoy tonight. The celebration will not last. We will remind her of the pain she caused." Outside, fireworks cracked in the sky. Inside, people danced, clapped, and raised their glasses to Mrs. Belinda's new beginning. But hidden behind the smiles and music, a storm was waiting. As the celebration grew louder, laughter, clapping, and the sweet smell of stew filled the restaurant, waiters moved quickly with trays of steaming jollof rice, fried plantain, and soft drinks. At one table near the back, the 3 men sat quietly. They looked like ordinary customers. They smiled when food was served. They laughed at jokes. But their eyes told another story. One of them, the tallest, leaned close to the others. "Watch," he whispered. "Tonight, her joy will turn to shame." He waited until a young waiter passed by with a tray of food. Like a snake, the man's hand moved fast. He dropped something small into one of the plates before anyone could notice. Then he leaned back, smiling like nothing had happened. Minutes later, the plate was set in front of a customer, a cheerful man who'd been clapping the loudest for Mrs. Belinda. He picked up his spoon, laughing with his friends, and took a big bite. At first, everything was normal. But then, his laughter broke, his face twisted. He grabbed his stomach with both hands. His spoon clattered to the floor. "Ah! Ah!" He groaned loudly. His chair fell back as he collapsed to the ground. The music stopped. Drums went silent. People rushed forward, their faces pale with fear.
"What happened?" one woman screamed. The man on the ground coughed, his eyes rolling back. "The food! The food!" he gasped. Whispers ran through the crowd like wildfire. Did Mrs. Belinda's food poison him? Ha! I knew this place was cursed. Maybe her food is not safe. Mrs. Belinda froze, her hand still clutching the microphone. Her face turned white. All eyes were now on her. Glory rushed forward, kneeling beside the sick man. She shouted, "Please, give him space! Somebody bring water!" But the crowd did not calm down. Fear had already entered their hearts. The ex-workers sat still at their table, hiding their smirks. Their plan was working. One leaned closer and whispered, "This is only the beginning. Soon, no one will trust her again." Mrs. Belinda's hands shook as she stared at the man on the ground. Her heart raced, her mind spinning. Just moments ago, she was celebrated as a changed woman. Now, the whispers of doubt were louder than the drums. The night of joy was turning into a night of shame.
The next morning, the restaurant was still quiet. The chairs were stacked, the floors freshly mopped. Outside, the sun rose softly, spreading golden light over the street. Glory stood at the entrance, waiting for the morning deliveries. She had not slept much. The memory of last night's sick customer kept replaying in her head. She whispered to herself, "No, I won't let anything destroy this place again, not after all we suffered." Soon, the sound of trucks rumbled down the road. Men jumped down and began unloading baskets of tomatoes, onions, peppers, and bags of rice. To anyone watching, it looked like a normal delivery day. But something felt strange. The baskets seemed heavier than usual, and a faint sour smell floated in the air. Glory frowned. She bent down, picked up a bright red tomato, and squeezed it gently. Instantly, it burst in her hand, leaking greenish water and spreading a terrible stench. She gasped and dropped it. One by one, she checked the baskets. Almost every vegetable was rotten, soft, or blackened. The onions were slimy. The peppers were shriveled. Even the rice bag had insects crawling inside. Her heart pounded. If she had cooked with this food, the whole restaurant would have been ruined. Customers would never trust them again. She turned sharply to the supplier. "What is this? Why would you bring spoiled food to us?" The supplier shifted nervously. He scratched his head, avoiding her eyes. "Ah, madame, don't blame me. I only brought what I was told. Your people, your workers, they gave me extra money. They said, 'Don't worry, just deliver this kind of food.'" Glory's eyes widened in shock. "Our workers!" she shouted. "Yes," the supplier whispered. "3 young men. They came to me last week. They said, 'Make sure Mrs. Belinda's restaurant fails. Deliver only bad things.' They even warned me to keep my mouth shut." Glory's chest burned with anger. She knew exactly who he meant. The same ex-workers who had once bowed before Mrs. Belinda were now determined to drag her down. She clenched her fists, her eyes wet with tears. "They want to destroy her! They want to destroy all of us!" Quickly, she began sorting through the rotten piles, searching for anything still fresh. If she had not checked, by afternoon the restaurant would have been serving poison. The reopening would have ended in disaster. She wiped the sweat from her face, determination burning inside her. "No," she whispered. "No, not while I'm still here. I will protect this place, even if it costs me everything." But in the shadows, far from her eyes, the ex-workers were already smiling. Their plan was working, and this was only the beginning. By evening, the restaurant was quiet again. The chairs stood empty, and only a few plates clattered in the kitchen. Mrs. Belinda sat in her office, her hand shaking as she flipped through the day's sales.
"It's too low," she whispered. "We just reopened. Why are people running away?" At that same moment, in a small, dark room far across town, one of her ex-workers leaned over his phone, grinning like a hungry wolf. His fingers moved fast as he posted online. "Don't eat at Mrs. Belinda's restaurant. Her food makes people faint. I saw it with my own eyes. She doesn't care about your life, only your money." Within minutes, the words began to spread. By nightfall, the message had been shared again and again, like poison running through a stream. On Facebook, on WhatsApp groups, on Twitter, Mrs. Belinda's name was burning. At the restaurant, the phone rang. A customer's voice shouted through the line, "Cancel my order! We heard someone fainted there." Then another call, and another. One after the other, every booking for the week vanished. Mrs. Belinda pressed her head against the table, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Why won't they let me live?" she whispered weakly. But Glory refused to sit still. She pulled out her small second-hand phone and opened the posts. Her heart sank when she saw the lies, the angry comments, the laughing emojis. Still, she wiped her face and began typing back. "No, please don't believe this. That customer fainted because of sickness, not the food. Our food is clean. I cook it myself." Again and again, she replied, defending the restaurant, defending Mrs. Belinda. When people mocked, she answered with patience. When they cursed, she answered with gentle words. The night grew darker. The city lights outside flickered, but Glory's phone screen kept glowing on her face. Her fingers shook, but she would not stop. At 1 a.m., Mrs. Belinda opened the office door. She froze when she saw Glory still bent over the phone, her eyes red, her hands trembling. "Ma, what are you doing?" Glory looked up, tears streaming down. "Ma, they are destroying your name, but I won't let them win. I will fight for you even here." Mrs. Belinda's lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, she saw someone willing to carry her pain like it was their own. Outside, the night was silent, but in the shadows, the ex-workers laughed softly. "Let her defend all she wants," one said. "By the time we finish, no one will step into that restaurant again." And so, the battle had only just begun.
The night was almost over. The last customers had left, and the restaurant was slowly becoming quiet. Chairs were pushed in, tables wiped clean, and the smell of food still hung in the air. Mrs. Belinda sighed with relief as she locked the cash drawer. "Finally, one peaceful day," she whispered. But peace did not last. From the kitchen, a strange hiss filled the air. It was sharp, steady, almost like a snake hiding in the shadows. Glory, who was carrying plates to the sink, froze. She tilted her head, listening. Then, boom! Flames burst from the cooking gas, racing up the wall in a sudden roar. Pots clattered to the floor, fire licking across the counters like a wild animal let loose. "Fire!" one of the workers screamed, running out. Panic spread instantly. Chairs fell, doors slammed open, and people shouted as smoke rushed into the main hall. Mrs. Belinda stumbled back, her eyes wide. "No! No! No! My restaurant!" she cried, clutching her chest. But while everyone else ran out into the street, Glory did the opposite. She covered her mouth with her sleeve and dashed into the burning kitchen. "No, Glory!" Mrs. Belinda screamed after her. "Come back! You'll die!" Inside, the heat was unbearable. Flames snapped at her like angry claws. Smoke stung her eyes, but she pushed forward. She grabbed a wet towel, threw it over the fire closest to the gas tank, and kicked a burning stool away from the shelves. Her eyes darted around, and that's when she saw it. The gas pipe under the main stove, it wasn't broken by accident. It had been cut. The metal edges were too clean, too sharp. Someone had planned this. Glory's heart pounded. She didn't have time to think. She twisted the valve shut with all her strength, coughing as the smoke grew thicker. Finally, with one last effort, she took the fire extinguisher, sprayed it over the flames, and fell to her knees, gasping for air. Minutes later, workers and neighbors ran back in with buckets of water and sand, finishing what Glory had started. Slowly, the flames died, leaving behind black walls, broken pots, and the bitter smell of smoke. When Glory stumbled out, her face dark with ash, Mrs. Belinda ran to her, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Glory, my dear, are you okay?" "Thank God, you have saved us today," she whispered, hugging her tightly. But Glory's eyes were not on Mrs. Belinda. They were on the shadows outside the restaurant, where she thought she saw movement. Someone had done this on purpose, and they weren't done yet.
The restaurant smelled of smoke for days. The walls were stained black, the kitchen shelves half burned, and the air was heavy with the bitter scent of fire. Workers moved about with tired faces, their voices low, their steps slow. Mrs. Belinda sat alone at one of the empty tables, staring at her shaking hands. Her eyes were swollen from lack of sleep. The fire still replayed in her mind, the flames, the screams, the chaos. Maybe this is a sign, she whispered, almost to herself. Maybe I don't deserve this second chance. Everything I touch gets ruined. Her words hung in the air like a curse. Two of the waitresses exchanged worried looks. One leaned close to the other and muttered, "I don't know if we should stay. What if it happens again? What if next time we don't make it out alive?" A young cook set down his knife with a loud clink. "I can't keep risking my life. I came here to work, not to die." His voice trembled, his eyes darting to the charred kitchen door. The mood was heavy. Fear spread from one worker to another like smoke filling a room. Some shook their heads, whispering that it wasn't worth it. Some even pulled out their aprons, ready to leave for good. Mrs. Belinda buried her face in her palms, tears sliding through her fingers. "They're right," she whispered shakily. "I only brought them into danger. I should close this place before someone gets hurt again." But just as her words threatened to break the room, Glory stood up. Her eyes burned with quiet fire, her voice strong even in the silence. "No!" she said sharply. Everyone turned to her. Glory stepped forward, her hands balled into fists. "Listen to me. This is what they want. Whoever is behind this wants us to give up. They want us to run away so they can laugh at us. But we will not give them that joy." She moved closer to Mrs. Belinda and placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "Madam, you gave me a chance when I had nothing. You believed in me when nobody else would. If we give up now, what do we have left?" Her voice rose, filling the room with courage. "If we stay united, no one can bring us down. Not fire, not lies, not fear. We are stronger together. And if they want war, then we will fight, but we will not break." For a long moment, silence hung in the air. Then, slowly, the workers nodded. The cook picked up his knife again. The waitresses tied their aprons back around their waists. Mrs. Belinda wiped her tears, looking at Glory with a new spark in her eyes. Maybe she did deserve this chance. But in the shadows outside, unseen by all, someone listened and smiled.
The next morning, the restaurant opened quietly, but Mrs. Belinda's face was heavy with worry, and Glory could see it. She tried to smile and keep the staff busy, but just when peace seemed possible, another storm rolled in. "Madam," one of the waiters shouted, rushing from the front desk, "the money is gone! The money from yesterday's sales! It's missing!" Gasps filled the room. The cashier's drawer was empty, not a single note left inside. Everyone gathered around, whispering, "How? Who would steal it? Could it be someone among us? This place has no luck at all." Mrs. Belinda's hand shook as she held her head. "Not again. Not now," she whispered. Suddenly, a sharp voice rose from the corner. It was a man who had been working in the kitchen but looked too calm for the chaos. "I saw her," he said, pointing at Glory with a smirk. "Yes, I saw Glory near the cashier late last night. Maybe she is the one who took it." The room went still. All eyes turned to Glory. Her heart froze. "Me? How?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "You think I would do this?" The man nodded firmly, and another worker quickly agreed, "Yes, I saw her too. She is the only one who could have taken it." Mrs. Belinda's face twisted with pain. She looked at Glory, her eyes searching for the truth. For a moment, silence cut through the air. Then Mrs. Belinda's lips trembled. "Glory, please tell me it's not true." Glory's chest burned. She had stood by Mrs. Belinda through fire and storm, and now she was the thief in their eyes. But instead of crying, she lifted her head and said firmly, "I didn't steal the money, and I will prove it." She turned to the man who had accused her and watched his hands. Something glittered beneath his shirt sleeve. Glory's eyes widened. It was the corner of a folded note, part of the missing money. Quick as lightning, she reached forward and grabbed his wrist. The man struggled, but the notes spilled out onto the floor, fluttering like guilty birds. Everyone gasped. "So, it's you!" Mrs. Belinda shouted, pointing at him. "You are the thief!" The man's face went pale. He stuttered, I was only keeping it safe." But no one believed him. The truth was clear. He had been bribed to frame Glory. Mrs. Belinda turned to Glory with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry I doubted you. Forgive me." Glory placed her hand gently on Mrs. Belinda's shoulder. "We are in this together. They want to break us, but they will not win." And in that moment, trust between them grew like fire in the dark, stronger, brighter, unbreakable. But outside, the ex-workers were watching from a distance and smiling. The game was far from over.
The night was quiet. The last customers had left, and the restaurant finally rested after a long, tiring day. Mrs. Belinda walked slowly to her office upstairs, her body weak, but her heart still trying to be strong. She wanted to rest, maybe write down the day's sales, and then go home with Glory. But as she pushed her door open, something strange caught her eye. A small white envelope lay on the floor, right under the crack of the door. It was not there before. Her hand shook as she bent down and picked it up. On the front, her name was written in black ink, Belinda. No greeting, no kindness, only her name. She opened it, and her eyes froze as she read the words inside. "Leave this restaurant, or the next attack won't spare your life." Mrs. Belinda gasped. The paper slipped from her fingers and fell to the ground. Her knees weakened, and she sat heavily on the chair, her breathing fast. A shadow moved at the doorway. It was Glory, carrying a tray of dishes to wash. "Ma, are you okay?" she asked softly. Mrs. Belinda could not hide it. She held up the letter with trembling hands. "Look, Glory, they want me dead.
They will kill me if I don't stop." Glory's eyes scanned the letter. Her heart burned like fire. She lifted her head, her eyes shining with courage. "Ma, listen to me. This is fear speaking. That's all they want, to scare you. But we will not run. Not today. Not ever." Mrs. Belinda shook her head, tears rolling down her face. "But Glory, what if they are serious? What if next time it is not just fire or lies? What if they take my life?" Glory knelt beside her, holding her hand tight. "Then they will have to face me first," she said firmly, her voice steady like stone. "I will not let them touch you. I will not let them destroy what we built." Downstairs, the other workers whispered, sensing something was wrong. Fear spread like smoke in their hearts. Some wanted to quit, some wanted to hide. But Glory's words rose above the fear, like a shield of light. "Let them come," she said, standing tall in the dim office light. "Let them try. This time they will see that we are not weak." And outside, in the shadows of the street, 3 dark figures watched the restaurant windows. One of them smiled coldly. "She had read it," he whispered. "Good. The next step will break her completely." And the night carried their laughter like a curse in the wind.
The restaurant lights glowed softly that night, warm and welcoming. Music played from a small speaker in the corner as Mrs. Belinda sat at her favorite table, tired but smiling. Customers were still coming in, some clapping her shoulder, others praising her food. For the first time in days, she felt a little hope. Then he walked in. A man in a clean shirt, tall and polite, carrying the face of a harmless friend. He greeted everyone with a big smile and even bowed slightly when he saw Mrs. Belinda. "Madam," he said with a cheerful voice, "I am so happy to see this place open again. May God bless your hands." Mrs. Belinda smiled, her heart softening. She was not used to kindness these days. "Thank you, my son," she replied warmly. The man raised his hand to the waiter. "Bring your finest drink. I will share a toast with our strong madam tonight." The waiter hurried off. Soon 2 glass cups arrived, filled with a sweet, colorful drink. The man reached into his pocket quickly, his hands moving faster than eyes could see. A small packet of white powder slipped between his fingers and into Mrs. Belinda's cup. He stirred it with his spoon, smiling like nothing happened. But a sharp eye saw it. Glory. She had been watching him from the moment he entered. Her sharp eyes caught the tiny packet, the fast movement, and the powder disappearing into the liquid. Her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. Mrs. Belinda lifted the glass with a grateful smile, about to drink. "No! Ma! Stop!" Glory moved swiftly. She stumbled forward, pretending to trip over a chair. With her hand, she knocked the cup right out of Mrs. Belinda's fingers. The drink splashed across the table and fell to the floor, shattering the glass. Mrs. Belinda gasped, her clothes wet. "Glory, what are you doing?" she asked in shock. Glory bowed her head quickly, pretending to panic. "I'm so sorry, Ma. I wasn't careful. Please forgive me." The man forced a laugh, though his eyes burned with anger. Accidents happen," he said quickly, trying to cover his failure. "Bring another drink." But Glory shook her head, her voice low. "No, Ma, please, not tonight. You need rest." She gave the man a sharp look, one that carried a hidden warning. Mrs. Belinda sighed, wiping her hands with a napkin, not knowing how close she had come to death. She thought it was only clumsiness, but Glory knew. And outside the window, the stranger's shadowy friends were watching. One of them whispered, "She stopped it again. That maid, she's too dangerous." But the war was far from over.
Day by day, the restaurant grew quieter. At first, it was only a few empty chairs here and there. Then, whole tables stood untouched. By the 3rd week, The once busy restaurant was almost empty. Mrs. Belinda sat at the corner table, her chin resting on her palm. The sound of clattering plates was gone. The laughter of customers was gone. Only silence remained, broken by the slow ticking of the wall clock. "Maybe," Belinda whispered, her voice trembling, "maybe I should close this place again." Her eyes watered as she looked at the empty seats. "No one trusts me anymore." Glory stood near her, her face firm but gentle. "No, Ma, we can't give up. If you stop now, then they win. That's what they want." "But Glory," Mrs. Belinda sighed, her voice weak, "what if they are right? What if this place is cursed? Look around." She spread her hand across the room. "Nothing but shadows and empty seats." Glory felt a heavy pain in her chest, but she refused to bow to fear. That night, she sat awake with a piece of paper and pen, thinking hard. Then her eyes lit up with an idea. The next morning, Glory rushed into Mrs. Belinda's office, her face glowing with hope. "Ma, I have a plan." Mrs. Belinda raised her tired eyes. "A plan?" "Yes," Glory said quickly. "We will host a community-free meal day. We will feed the poor, the children, the old mothers, the tired workers, everyone. No money, just food and love. People will see that this restaurant is not a place of poison or lies. They will see it is a place of kindness." Mrs. Belinda gasped. "Free? But Glory, how will we pay? We don't even have much left." Glory held her nylon bag close to her chest. "I will give my own small savings. Others will help too. Trust me, Ma, this will bring them back." And it did. By afternoon, the restaurant was alive again. People rushed in, some holding plates. Old women blessed Mrs. Belinda with shaky voices. "God will reward you, my daughter." Hungry workers ate steaming jollof rice and clapped their hands in joy. The smell of food, the sound of laughter, and the sight of people eating together filled the air once more. The restaurant glowed with new life, and they made more sales than before. Mrs. Belinda sat in her chair, her eyes wet, whispering, "Glory, you saved me again." But outside, in the corner of the street, the ex-workers stood watching, their faces dark with envy. One spat on the ground and growled, "So she thinks she can rise again? This is only the beginning. Next time, we will break her completely." The storm was not over. It was only gathering more power. One fateful evening. The restaurant lights had just gone off after a long day of feeding people. Mrs. Belinda stretched her tired arms and smiled weakly. "Finally, some peace," she whispered as she stepped outside. The street was dark, only a few lamps flickering weakly. Her heels clicked softly on the pavement as she walked toward her car. She didn't notice the shadows moving behind her. Suddenly, a strong hand grabbed her arm. Mrs. Belinda gasped, her eyes wide. Out of the darkness, 3 masked men appeared. Their faces were hidden, their eyes sharp. "Where do you think you're going, madam?" one hissed, his voice filled with hate. "Let me go," Mrs. Belinda cried, struggling to pull away. Another man laughed coldly. "You destroyed our lives, and now it's your turn to suffer." He raised a heavy stick high in the air. Mrs. Belinda's heart raced, her knees grew weak. "Help! Somebody help me!" she screamed. But the street was empty. Just as the stick came down, a figure leapt out of the shadows. It was Glory. "Leave her alone," she shouted, holding a big wooden pestle, the one they used to pound yams and pepper in the restaurant. Her voice was trembling but strong. Without thinking, she pushed Mrs. Belinda behind her and faced the men. The attackers paused for a moment, shocked.
"This small girl again?" one sneered. "Always in the way." Glory's fists clenched. Her eyes burned with fire. She picked up the big wooden pestle and swung it with all her strength, striking one man across the arm. He growled in pain, dropping the stick. Mrs. Belinda stood frozen, her mouth open in shock. She had never seen anyone so brave, especially not the same girl she once treated like dirt. The men turned, their anger now fully on Glory. "You will pay for this," the leader snarled. Two of them rushed at her together. Glory fought back, dodging and swinging, her breath heavy, her hands shaking but strong. One blow landed on her shoulder, and she stumbled, but she refused to fall. Mrs. Belinda's heart pounded as she watched. Her voice cracked with fear. "Glory, please, they will hurt you." But Glory did not stop. The three masked men circled her like wolves, their shadows dancing on the empty street. Mrs. Belinda's eyes filled with tears as she realized this battle was no longer about her restaurant. It was about life and death. And as the men closed in on Glory, raising their weapons high, Mrs. Belinda screamed into the night. The street echoed with shouts and heavy footsteps. Glory stood, her chest heaving, sweat dripping down her face. The wooden pestle in her hand shook, but she refused to drop it. The masked men rushed her again. One swung his stick hard. Crack! It struck her arm. Glory cried out in pain, but still pushed forward, blocking another blow with her weak hands. Mrs. Belinda screamed, "Stop! Please stop! Don't hurt her!" Her tears rolled fast, her voice trembling. She tried to pull Glory away, but the men shoved her back. One of the attackers raised a knife, his eyes cold. "Tonight, someone will bleed," he growled. At that moment, Glory stepped in front of Mrs. Belinda, shielding her with her own body. With all the strength left in her, she swung again, knocking the knife from his hand. But the man's fist landed heavily on her side. Glory gasped, her knees giving way. "Glory!" Belinda cried, catching her as she stumbled. Blood dripped from a cut on Glory's forehead. Yet even in pain, her lips whispered, Don't be afraid, Ma. I won't let them touch you." The men froze for a moment, shocked at Glory's strength and courage. They tried, but they couldn't defeat her. One spat on the ground. "This girl, she's not normal. She's a demon." Another pulled his friend back. "Let's go. Not tonight, but next time she won't escape." Their voices were low, filled with anger. Then, like shadows, they disappeared into the dark street. From a distance, a pair of eyes watched them. One of the men whispered to himself, "This is only the beginning. She saved you tonight, but she cannot save you forever."